Ever since Captain Ibrahim Traore took charge in Burkina Faso, it's been a whirlwind of reactions. Western governments, media outlets, and even ECOWAS, the regional political body, have been pretty vocal, demanding that he step aside and let civilian leaders take over. Some local politicians, itching to get back into power, have joined the chorus too. To them, having a military leader in charge is nothing short of unacceptable. But here's where things get interesting. Ordinary citizens of Burkina Faso feel differently. They've stood by Traoré, hitting the streets in protest to show their support. So what's going on here? Why is there such a divide between what outsiders and elites want and what the people on the ground actually support? And what does this mean for the rest of Africa? Let's unpack this. You see, democracy is one of the bedrock values of the West. They champion the idea that people should have the freedom to elect their leaders, hold them accountable, and repeat the process after a set term. On paper, it sounds great, right? But the West also tends to view anything outside of this framework, like military rule in Burkina Faso or communism in China, as inherently oppressive. The narrative goes that governments like these stifle freedom, suppress voices, and concentrate power in the hands of a few. And while there's some truth to that, here's the catch. Democracy isn't always the shining beacon of fairness and freedom it's made out to be. In fact, it can be just as flawed. Take Equatorial Guinea as an example. This country struck oil in the 1990s, and on paper, its citizens are some of the wealthiest in Africa. But if you look closer, the reality is starkly different. Over 70% of the population lives in poverty. Many don't have clean water, and a shocking number of kids aren't even in school. What's behind this mess? President Teodoro Obiang, a leader who's held on to power for decades under the banner of democracy. The story of how he got here is something else. After Equatorial Guinea gained independence from Spain in 1968, Francisco Macias Nguema became the country's first president. His rule was an outright nightmare, filled with purges, mass killings, and unchecked brutality. Some reports even suggest that a third of the population either fled the country or lost their lives. In 1979, Macias's own nephew, Teodoro Obiang, staged a coup to overthrow him. Initially, people hoped Teodoro would lead with a more humane approach, and for a while, it seemed like he might. But fast forward to today, and his rule is a textbook case of authoritarianism wrapped in democratic clothing. Yes, there are opposition parties, but everyone knows the game is rigged. Elections? They're more of a show than a genuine contest. Teodoro controls everything, and his grip on power is ironclad. And then there's the corruption. Government officials, especially those in the president's inner circle, have turned the country's oil wealth into their personal piggy bank. While citizens struggle to make ends meet, Teodoro and his allies live in unimaginable luxury. Now, compare that with the cries for democracy in Burkina Faso, and it begs the question, is the system always the problem, or is it the people running it? Let us pause for a second. Please tell us which country you are watching from. Also, tell us if you would love someone like Captain Ibrahim Traore to rule your country. Tell us why in the comments section. Have you done that? Let us continue. Back in 2003, President Teodoro Obiang made an announcement that left people scratching their heads. He claimed he had to take over the country's entire treasury to stop government workers from stealing money. Sounds noble, right? Well, not exactly. Shortly after, he funneled over $500 million into more than 60 private accounts, most of which he controlled, at a bank in Washington, D.C. And what happened to the bank? The US slapped it with a $16 million fine, like a slap on the wrist, and that was that. Meanwhile, the president kept doing as he pleased. That same year, things took a bizarre turn when the country's state radio announced that Obiang wasn't just a president. Oh no, he was basically a god. They claimed he had power over everything and everyone, could talk directly to the Almighty, and even had the divine right to kill without facing consequences. Yes, they really said that. By 2007, suspicions about his extravagant spending were making headlines. The US Department of Justice accused Obiang and his son, Teodorin, of using public funds like a personal piggy bank to buy mansions, private jets, and luxury cars in America. But instead of facing any real consequences, Teodorin handed over $30 million in assets, and the case was quietly closed. Things escalated over the next few years. French and American officials started seizing assets tied to the Obiangs. We're talking mansions, rare wine collections, and fleets of supercars. In 2016, Swiss authorities confiscated 11 luxury cars, including Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and even a Bugatti. But the jaw-dropping moment came in 2021, when French officials took hold of $170 million worth of Traoré's assets, including a mind-boggling 101-room mansion near the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. You'd think these actions would slow him down, right? Not even close. Traoré is still living large, spending millions on his over-the-top lifestyle while, incredibly, asking the United Nations for financial aid. And here's the kicker. President Obiang made this same son his vice president. It's pretty clear he's grooming Traoré to take over whenever he decides to step down, if that day ever comes. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. Obiang's nearly 40-year reign has been a case study in corruption and oppression. His government crushes any form of dissent like a hammer on glass. In their parliament of 170 seats, the opposition holds one. Just one. And if you're even suspected of being critical of the regime, you can expect to be locked up without trial for months. Take Joaquin Elo Ayeto, for example. All he did was question how the government was spending money, and he ended up in jail. It's not just about silencing critics, it's about protecting the Obiang family's empire. They've managed to dodge every attempt to hold them accountable, continuing to amass vast personal wealth while the rest of the country struggles. And here's the most mind-boggling part of all. Equatorial Guinea is still, technically, a democracy. In countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone, democracy is the official system of government. But if you ask everyday people living there, many will tell you they don't feel like they have much power or freedom. Democracy might be the perfect fit for some Western nations, but does that mean it's the right system for everyone? Especially in Africa. Take Burkina Faso as an example. Ever since Captain Ibrahim Traore took the reins, the West has been loud about wanting him to step aside and bring back civilian rule. Every decision he makes is painted by Western media as a ploy to cling to power. But if you ask the citizens of Burkina Faso, the story is very different. A few months ago, Traoré considered stepping down, but the people of Burkina Faso had other plans. Thousands of them gathered in the municipal stadium in Ouagadougou, their capital city, to demand that Traoré stay in power and extend his leadership. It wasn't just another rally, it was historic. Think about it. How often do you see people in African nations rallying to keep their government in power? In the last 20 years, it's almost unheard of. But here they were, showing up in massive numbers. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just Burkinabe citizens at the rally. Activists and visitors from neighbouring Sahel countries joined in, standing shoulder to shoulder in support of Traoré. This wasn't some staged show of loyalty. Traoré didn't pressure anyone into attending, especially not people from outside the country. People are watching, and they see what Traoré is doing for his country. His efforts haven't gone unnoticed, even outside Burkina Faso. Remember when Ghana's people gave him a hero's welcome during the inauguration of their new president? That wasn't just for show. It was genuine respect. Activists, locals and visitors came together at that rally because they believe in Traoré's vision for Burkina Faso. Yet surprisingly, this incredible moment was ignored by Western media. Why, you might wonder? It seems pretty obvious. If the Western narrative had been flipped, if instead of support, citizens were demanding Traoré step down, every major news outlet would have been all over it. The headlines would have been everywhere, shaping the global perception of Burkina Faso. But that's not what happened. Instead, thousands came out to back Traoré, and it doesn't fit the story the West wants to tell. They'd rather people believe that democracy is the ultimate solution for every nation, despite evidence that it's not always the best fit. Here's the thing. It's not about the type of government. It's about the leader. Whether it's democracy, monarchy, or communism, the system only works if the person in charge is strong, patriotic, and genuinely cares about their people. For decades, Africans have seen how democracy can fail when leaders use it to serve themselves instead of their citizens. That's why what matters most isn't the title or the system, it's the actions of the leader. And since Traoré took charge, he's been doing just that, putting the interests of his people first. So, is it any surprise that the people rallied for him to stay? Before the rally, Rasmain Sawadogo, the chief coordinator of the Black African Defense League in Burkina Faso, called for unity and vigilance. He urged citizens to stick together, warning them about forces that might try to disrupt their movement. An attack on this event, he said, is an attack on Captain Ibrahim Traore, his government, and the sovereign people of Burkina Faso. When leaders betray the trust of their people, It's more than just disappointing. It feels like an attack on the very heart of the nation. That's why, when citizens of Burkina Faso gathered for what would become a historic rally, it wasn't just a show of support for their president, Captain Ibrahim Traore. It was a bold declaration of hope, unity, and the belief that real change was finally within reach. The event wasn't thrown together at the last minute. Organizers spent weeks, maybe months, ensuring everything was in place to send a clear message to the world. This wasn't your typical protest or political gathering. It was a movement, one that brought together thousands of Burkinabe locals and supporters from neighboring Sahel countries. These people came not out of coercion or obligation, but because they believed in something bigger, a shared future shaped by the bold vision of their leader. The rally's message was unambiguous. As local civil society leaders put it, "We don't want to hear about another president. We don't want elections." These words came not from a place of apathy, but from decades of disillusionment. The memory of leaders who promised much but delivered little weighed heavily on everyone there. Since the death of revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso had endured decades of leadership marked by greed, incompetence, and a focus on serving foreign interests over the needs of its people. Then came Traoré, and with him, a glimmer of hope. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso's trajectory began to shift dramatically, particularly in agriculture. For more than 60 years, Burkinabe citizens were told they couldn't grow crops like wheat. The soil wasn't right, they said. The climate wouldn't allow it. But Traoré challenged those assumptions, and now Burkina Faso is producing wheat, turning a long-standing myth into a reality. This agricultural transformation didn't just happen by chance. Traoré launched ambitious initiatives like Operation Agro-Pastoral Offensive and the Presidential Initiative for Food Self-Sufficiency. These programs weren't just political slogans, they were backed by tangible actions. In February 2024, a groundbreaking project to boost agricultural production was launched with €38.4 million in funding from the African Development Bank. This initiative was designed to shield Burkina Faso from the global food crises triggered by events like the Russia-Ukraine war. But Traoré didn't stop there. Instead of splurging on lavish perks, as so many leaders often do, he prioritized the needs of the nation. In March 2024, he invested 78 billion CFA francs in agricultural equipment, seeds, and fertilizers. This wasn't just about fixing today's problems. It was about building a sustainable future where Burkina Faso could rely on its own resources to feed its people. Traoré's reforms extended far beyond farming. He turned his attention to the mining sector, a cornerstone of Burkina Faso's economy that had long been riddled with corruption and mismanagement. In 2023, he made the bold decision to ban gold exports temporarily to clean up the industry. He didn't stop there. He established a gold refinery and a mining waste management facility, creating jobs and ensuring that the wealth generated by the country's natural resources stayed within its borders. These actions reflected a philosophy reminiscent of his mentor, Thomas Sankara. Traoré embodied Sankara's ideals of self-reliance, fairness, and putting the people first. Like Sankara, he refused to take a presidential salary. He also cut the inflated wages of politicians, calling it a travesty that a few could live in comfort while millions struggled just to survive. Traoré insisted, for society to be stable, the system must be fair. Security was another top priority. Traoré worked tirelessly to ensure that Burkina Faso was no longer a soft target for threats. He bolstered the military with new weapons and modern equipment and formed key alliances with countries like Russia and other Sahel nations. His goal was clear: a safe and sovereign Burkina Faso. The results speak for themselves. By 2024, the World Governance Index ranked Burkina Faso as one of the best-governed countries in Africa. This wasn't just a fluke, it was a testament to Traoré's leadership and the impact of his policies. It's a stunning achievement, especially when compared to many African nations with civilian governments that fail to meet even basic expectations. Traoré's rise and his success highlight a fundamental truth. Good governance doesn't depend on whether a nation is a democracy, a monarchy, or a military state. It hinges on the quality of its leader. A strong, ethical, and visionary leader can transform any system into one that delivers peace, development, and prosperity for the people. And that is precisely what Captain Ibrahim Traoré has done for Burkina Faso. What are your thoughts about Captain Ibrahim Traoré's rule? Let us know in the comments below.